unhelpful thinking styles. We process what we see and experience through certain filters to interpret and construct our versions of reality. But some of these filters distort the reality and are harmful to our own well being. So we'll be looking at some of these. But to start with, do you know the difference between sensation and perception? Sensation is the process of detecting the sensory input in our external world through our senses. And the perception is the brain's interpretation and organization of that input into meaningful experiences. For example, when the light enters your eyes, your retina detects it as raw visual data, sensations such as colors that form. However, then your brain interprets it as, for instance, red apple on the table, which is a perception. And just like perception, our brain interprets and organizes our experiences into subjective experiences and construct beliefs about the world. However, what you believe and think may not be true because we often see what we want to see or what fits into our pre-existing beliefs and schema. We often use certain cognitive distortions, which are also called thinking errors, and they are irrational thoughts that can affect our emotions. And through these cognitive filters or thinking errors, we sometimes change what we actually see or experience, and these can be extreme and they can be harmful to our well-being. To just give examples of a few of these cognitive distortions, they are emotional reasoning, overgeneralization, abstract inference, personalization, all or none thinking, shoe statements, labeling, catastrophization, and jumping to conclusion, just to name a few. And to give you more example of what they are, for instance, magnification and minimization is magnifying the negative and minimizing the positive. For instance, I made a tiny mistake at work, it's a huge disaster. Or to say, I got a big reward, but it's not a big deal. And emotional reasoning is saying, I feel anxious, so this must be very dangerous. So it's basing on your reasoning on what your strong emotions tell you. And overgeneralization is generalizing from one or a few experiences to say, for instance, I failed once, so I will always be awful or always fail. And abstract inference to say is using very small details or small examples to make a conclusion. For instance, she yawned while I was talking, so she must find me boring. And all non-thinking, black and white thinking is to see things in dichotomous two extreme views. So it's say, for example, if I'm not perfect, then I'm total failure. And personalization is self-blaming or attributing everything personally to. So for instance, to say it's like my friend looked upset, so there must be something that I've done wrong. Okay. And labeling is something like, labeling yourself like I failed the test, so I'm an idiot or I'm stupid. And should statement is making a lot of should or must statements by saying I should always be productive, or otherwise I'm a failure, or I'm lazy, or I'm worthless. And mind reading or catastrophizing, all of these are predictive, jumping to conclusion. These are all predictive thinking that we have. So we don't know the future or other people's mind, but we jump to conclusions. For instance, an example of mind reading might be, she didn't reply, so she must be angry at me. And catastrophizing is often found in people with anxiety, and it's to say, if I make a mistake, it'll be a disaster. Or if there was turbulence in an airplane, there's going to be an accident. So it's about thinking about the worst possible outcome every time, or what can go wrong. So I want you to pause the video for a moment and think about look at these handouts and these list of more examples and explanation of the cognitive disorders, and think about when was the last time that I, had these thinking errors, and which one do I tend to use frequently, and try to give an example for those cognitive distortions that you have used in the past. Next, I would like to show you some useful questions that can be very helpful to check your thoughts. So often we take it for granted or take our thoughts to be facts whenever they come across our mind. And these questions in this handout can be very helpful. So asking yourself things like, what evidence do I have to support that this thought is true? And how can I test this assumption? And if I have a trusted friend, can I check these thoughts with it? Or what would my friend say in this situation? Am I making assumptions? Am I overgeneralizing? Or am I blaming myself unnecessarily? Am I looking at shades of gray or just black and white? Am I assuming the worst? Can I also assume the best? Or what is the realistic outcome in the situation? And are there any exceptions to these absolute, like I should or always never? So I think this will be a very important guideline for you to check your thoughts. And it's always really important to not take all the thoughts for granted, and always try to check to see if it's real. And sometimes it is partly or it's realistic, however they might not be helpful. So try to turn those thoughts into something that would be more helpful for you. So remember that not all your thoughts are facts, not all your thoughts are helpful. So always check your thoughts for clarity and try to turn them into your helpful, friendly friend. That's it for today. So I hope you can look at your thoughts clearly and let them guide you and not trick you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.